Stephanie and I'm part of the senior management team here at Mazuma. Now my official job title is Head of Professional Standards, but all that means is that I am responsible for dealing with areas of technical advice, guidance, training for staff members and other areas of compliance, which leads me on to what this video is about, and that is HMRC investigations. Now, I know they might be a little bit scary and daunting, especially receiving a letter in the post about HMRC wanting to check records, but they are a lot more common than you would think. And if dealt with in a timely and helpful manner, HMRC can usually come to a decision and close the case pretty quickly, leaving it quite a simple process in a lot of cases. So HMRC can perform a full inquiry into something, so that might be looking at your whole business. They can perform an aspect inquiry, which, as it suggests, would look at one aspect of your business or tax return or tax affairs, or believe it or not, they can just do simply a random inquiry, and that does happen. So don't be too worried or scared if you do ever get contacted by HMRC about this. As long as you deal with it in the correct way, you'll find that it's quite an easy thing to overcome and deal with. So HMRC may look at your accounts and tax calculations. They could look at your self-assessment tax return, a corporation tax return, and possibly PAYE details if you're registered as an employer. If you're registered for VAT, it could be your VAT record. But it's basically any area that you do pay tax in, or any taxes you do pay, HMRC can investigate. So it's not just the more common areas of income tax or corporation tax. It could be something like capital gains tax, CIS tax under the construction industry scheme, IR35, and ensuring that you're compliant with that. So some examples could be if you've maybe not included employment on your self-assessment tax return. Often people do get a little bit confused with this because you believe you've paid tax at source, so haven't put employment details on a tax return. Or it could be that you've not realised if you're the highest earner in your relationship and earn above £50,000, you may have to pay a high income child benefit tax charge. It could be that you have put in for a refund of tax under the construction industry scheme, but maybe your figures don't quite match up with those submitted by your contractor. So this is completely not an exhaustive list by any means, but just a few examples of how HMRC may look into certain tax affairs. So what they'll usually do is they will usually write to you about a check of what they want to look at and give you either a list of information or just a bit of an idea about what exactly they are looking to check. They'll usually give you a deadline for you to provide any information that they're looking for, and they may also want to arrange a visit as well, which is also common practice, that and that may take place at your home or a business address, or even some of the HMRC offices, depending on what's decided. So if you do not provide the information that HMRC have asked for, or if you refuse to provide it or refuse a visit, for example, the HMRC can look to charge penalties in those cases. But they will take into account any personal circumstances. So if you've been seriously ill, if you've maybe had a death in the family of someone closely related to you, they will take these things into account. So it is important to let them know. So what will happen is after HMRC have received the information they're looking for and the check is complete, they'll write to you with the outcome. That might be that you've overpaid tax and you're due a refund. If you've underpaid tax, they'll usually give you 30 days to pay that plus interest. So aside from the actual decision, HMRC will then look to see if, depending on that outcome, whether they need to charge any other penalties. So that will be based on things like the reason for the mistake or the error, if there was one on a tax return, for example, or how the check came about and any reasons for that. It's also going to be based on whether HMRC had to contact you or if you told HMRC, and also it's going to be based on how helpful you were during the investigation. So it always does go in your favour if you are as compliant and helpful as possible. And like I said, often these checks can either be random or there's something that's a very quick thing to sort of clear up and get resolved with HMRC. So if you disagree with either a decision made or a penalty charge, HMRC will usually set out in their decision to you how to appeal this. And there's several different ways to appeal and different levels depending on how far you want to go in what you believe their decision is and how right or wrong you believe that is. So you can either usually write to HMRC in response to the letter. They will set that out and they will give you a deadline for writing to them. They did also introduce something called a statutory review, which was introduced in 2009, and that basically allows you to ask HMRC to review their decision, and often somebody independent to the original decision will take a look at that. There's alternative dispute resolution, and that then can be looked at as a basically an option to try and look at the decision that HMRC have made again, or it could even go as far as a tribunal. So it does depend on basically how much you disagree with the thing, either the penalty that's been issued or the decision. And at least there are those options for you to sort of go through in terms of that. The things like a tribunal, you may find you're covering the costs. But overall, as long as you have been as helpful, compliant, and provided everything HMRC needs, they often decide to issue no penalty at all, because they will look at, if there was an error, for example, was that deliberate and was it concealed? So HMRC do really look at sort of the more finer details of how these things happen, and can often be very reasonable in then the outcome of that. So it's just to basically say that, investigations do happen. They're never going to be maybe the nicest thing to receive in the post that day, but they're maybe not something that you need to worry about as much, as long as you deal with it in the right way. And should there be something you do disagree with, there are these appeals processes. I hope that puts your mind at ease if this does ever happen to you or your business, and allows you to move forward from there.